Now going over to the culture part of the podcast, you have IBM calling Elon Musk anti-Semitic. The ultimate irony. I could not comprehend something any more ironic, considering earlier this year I recently read a book called IBM and the Holocaust, or Holocaust, depending on how you pronounce it, in which that book actually details how IBM was famous for making a merging of multiple companies, the most valuable intellectual property of which was the tabulation machine. Now, a brief history on the tabulation machine, very similar to how AI is breakthrough today technology. Back then, it literally cut down the time to do a task by tenfold. Unfathomable gains in terms of efficiencies. And Watson, he was a very aggressive businessman. And they were doing the tabulations. They actually started by doing the census for all these countries in Europe, as well as the United States. And they did the census for everyone's race, their religion. So when Germany started to take over, rather. Again, I'm not a doctor, but if you click the subscribe button, it may cure my stuttering. Perhaps it's worth a shot. That's all I'm saying. Now, IBM was responsible for all the logistics of World War II, basically. And on the United States side, they actually created munitions for the United States as well as logistics as well. So they played both sides. Now, with Germany, not only do they do the calculations as to keeping track of everyone, trying to think of I don't think there is a polite or a high-class way of covering this topic. It's morally abhorrent and disgusting, to say the least, and perhaps the most evil thing a company has done in history. Now, IBM identified the Jewish community. They also helped Germany keep track of them with the numbered system. It was IBM's subsidiary in Germany doing that. And it was a fascinating instance where IBM owned it, but a lot of people suspect, and the book again is called IBM The Holocaust by Edwin Black, and it's a brilliant read. It's extremely detailed. A lot of people came together to put that data together. But as well as instances where, given all the information that they currently have, it is collectively agreed that IBM knew what was going on. And Watson, historically, he was very much of a control freak. He was calling the shots, even though officially the companies were disconnected after a certain period of time when World War II began, and the United States started to put up some barriers and try to disconnect businesses from operating in Germany. Now, they also did logistics for the trains, for everything from even military supplies moving around. It not only gave them the tool to do what they did, but they finally tuned the tool consistently to make it more and more efficient. So there could be an argument that IBM is the most morally vacuous business in history, I believe. And now IBM is calling Elon Musk anti-Semitic. So interesting enough, let's pull up the first article. So this is, again, from CBS News. And they pull up a couple of the tweets that Elon Musk had liked as well as reliked. Now, someone by the name of the artist formerly known as Eric on Twitter, or X, as 18 people call it, he says, quote, let's see here. Okay, Jewish communities have been pushing this kind of exact dialectical hatred against whites that they claim to have people to stop using against them. I'm deeply disinterested in giving the tiniest shit now about Western Jewish populations coming to the disturbing ... And Elon Musk said, quote, you have said the truth. Now, Elon Musk is also starting a battle with Media Matters, who historically is very much bipartisan, or rather, strike that, reverse it, very partisan in the fact that they only attack one side of the political aisle, and they're very much against any modicum of free speech. And they're saying, IBM is actually claiming that there's a lot of hate speech on Twitter, or as 18 people call it, X. And the controversy, as more and more evidence is coming to light, as well as instances where apparently, and this is to be proven in the courts, the process has begun, is an instance where apparently you had Media Matters employees sign up to follow all these people on Twitter. And those people were very bombastic, and some of them were anti-Semitic, I believe. And Then Media Matters said, "Hey, why am I seeing a Apple? Why is this Apple advertisement appearing right next to this?" Well, they were following that person, and the ads they go to everyone. So that's one train of thought that many people are arguing, and that's another instance as kind of evolving around the situation. Now, when IBM was asked for comment of why are they pulling their funding, they said, quote, IBM has zero tolerance for hate speech and discrimination, and we have immediately suspended all advertising on X while we investigate this entirely unacceptable situation, unquote. That's from an IBM spokesperson. Now, interestingly enough, a little ADHD note, going back to the book, IBM The Holocaust, IBM never paid any retribution for this. They never paid anything in terms of, there's just a coincidence when the book came out, they happened to give a couple $1,000,000 to the Holocaust Museum. But they have never admitted any wrongdoing officially. And there's a lot of speculation on how many documents were actually destroyed. But in the book, there are several documents that are brought forth that had been unknown for years. It is a hard read in many ways, but I do recommend it. It is quite a lengthy read as well, and very complex in terms of the business and subsidiaries. But it is a horrifying and fascinating book. I do recommend you take a peek at it, especially if you're a business nerd like myself, as well as there are many reasons the book I find is fascinating. I recommend it. Can't recommend it enough. Now, pulling up Linda's response. So you had X saying, quote, X's advertising system says, quote, is not intentionally placing any brand actively next to this type of content, nor is a brand actively trying to support this content with placement, unquote. And they also, Twitter said, quote, groups like Media Matters aggressively search for posts on X and then go into the accounts, and if they see an ad, Media Matter researchers keep hitting refresh to capture as many brands as possible, unquote. Which, again, that makes sense because ads are just being placed for that person. The ads, as far as I know, in terms of their say, they can't decide what exactly they're placed next to. And again, if you're on Twitter and you say to follow someone, you're saying you want to see that content. So, interestingly enough, let me know if you disagree with this situation. But it sounds like more and more of a hit piece on Elon. And let's see here, going over to another news article on Variety, in which Elon Musk had also said, quote, everyone is allowed to be proud of their race except for the white people because we've been brainwashed into believing that our history was somehow worse than the other races, unquote. And that was, quote, super messed up, unquote. Continue to say, quote, time for this nonsense to end and shame anyone who perpetrates these lies, unquote. And interestingly enough, in terms of anecdotal experience, going to public school system, which unfortunately I did, there's a kind of that transition in history class where after a certain period in the United States, we were only taught about other countries' accomplishments, and it is a weird thing in the U.S. Every race is allowed to be proud of themselves except the Caucasian type. I remember my family was from Cuba, and it's one of those instances where I remember there's a Hispanic, Heritage Day. I think it was in high school or college. I wasn't too big into it just because, one of those instances where my family perhaps are just old school or old souls, but we always just brought me up to treat people, based on how their actions are, not based on things that they cannot control or that are outside of their control. So it's interesting to see, and let me know in the comments, do you think there's any truth to that? In terms of, there's other months of celebration for other inventors of different races, but it is oddly absent, especially from public schools. You really don't talk about that much. It's a very unusual situation. And again, in terms of treating everyone equally, one would think it would be rational to say, let's celebrate everyone's accomplishments, regardless of what they look like or they're like. So it's interesting that they're all saying that Elon is anti-Semitic because of those statements. And then they have an instance where Elon Musk also pointed out how George Soros is using a lot of money to elect district attorneys who those policies are having a lot of negative effects. George Soros happens to be Jewish. Well, that's a rabbit hole you might not want to go down into in terms of looking up his activities during the war or World War II. But it's an instance where, there are billionaires and philanthropists on both sides of the political aisle. And is famously, if you are against billionaires, if you hate rich people, one of the things you always hear about in terms of Republican donors is the Koch brothers. Well, yeah, they're successful, they're billionaires, and they make political donations, just like Bill Gates, just like George Soros. I mean, you have people both sides of the political aisle. Thanks to the big tech boom, I think you could argue in terms of monetarily, they're probably more on the left these days. If you look at the donations just of those companies in San Francisco Bay Area, it's over 99% to one side of the political aisle, usually Democrats. And it makes sense because they have more favorable policies. I understand why that happens. It's also the culture of the Bay or the San Francisco area. So let me know in the comments. Do you think there's any real legitimacy of this situation where people are believing and they're portraying Elon Musk as anti-Semitic, or do you think they're trying to attack him because he won't bend the knee? He's not building in these back doors to Twitter where they used to just communicate directly with all these government entities and censor people. I mean, it's one of those things where there's a little bit of truth to the old adage of yesterday's conspiracy theory is today's reality. Let me know in the comments. And if you want, I've been thinking about doing a book review. Let me know if you'd be interested in me covering the book IBM The Holocaust by Edwin Black. It is a very complex read. It is also it's a very dark book, of course. It's fascinating, but let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in hearing. Again, more feedback, the better. I want to make the show more interactive and more interesting to everyone, and obviously improve the quality over time. Again, as usual, it'll be fascinating to hear what you have to say. Thank you again, everyone, for taking time to tune in today. Don't forget to try to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of November. So if you can click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, leaving a comment is a great way to let me know how I can make the channel and the show better and better and improve the show quality. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.